Chapter 11. Larry found a tired-looking black woman on the lobby level who told him she thought Alice Underwood was up on the 24th floor, doing an inventory. He got an elevator and went up, aware that the other people in the car were stealing cautious glances at his forehead. The wound there was no longer bleeding, but it had caked over into an unsightly mess. The 24th floor was taken up by the executive offices of a Japanese camera company. Larry walked up and down the halls for almost 20 minutes, looking for his mother and feeling like a horse's ass. There were plenty of Occidental executives, but enough of them were Japanese to make him feel, at 6 feet 2, like a very tall horse's ass. The small men and women with the up-slanted eyes looked at his caked forehead and bloody jacket sleeve with unsettling oriental blandness. He finally spotted a door with custodian housekeeping on it behind a very large fern. He tried the knob. The door was unlocked and he peered inside. His mother was in there, dressed in her shapeless gray uniform, support hose, and crepe-soled shoes. Her hair was firmly caught under a black net. Her back was to him. She had a clipboard in one hand and seemed to be counting bottles of spray cleaner on a high shelf. Larry felt a strong and guilty impulse to just turn tail and run. Go back to the garage 2 blocks from her apartment building and get the Z. Fuck the 2 months rent he had just laid down on the space. Just get in and boogie. Boogie where? Anywhere. Bar Harbor, Maine. Tampa, Florida. Salt Lake City, Utah. Any place would be a good place, as long as it was comfortably over the horizon from Dewey the Deck and from this soap-smelling little closet. He didn't know if it was the fluorescent lights or the cut on his forehead, but he was getting one fuck of a headache. "Oh, quit whining, you goddamn sissy." "Hi, Mom," he said. She started a little but didn't turn around. "So, Larry. You found your way uptown?" "Sure." He shuffled his feet. "I wanted to apologize. I should have called you last night, yeah. Good idea. I stayed with Buddy. We went out steppin'. Did the town. I figured it was that. That or something like it." She hooked a small stool over with her foot, climbed up on it, and began to count the bottles of floor wax on the top shelf, touching each one lightly with the tips of her right thumb and forefinger as she went. She had to reach, and when she did, her dress pulled up and he could see beyond the brown tops of her stockings to the waffled white flesh of her upper thighs, and he turned his eyes away. Suddenly and aimlessly recalling what had happened to Noah's 3rd son when he looked at his father as the old man lay drunk and naked on his pallet. Poor guy had ended up being a hewer of wood and fetcher of water ever after. Him and all his descendants. And that's why we have race riots today, son. Praise God. Is that all you came to tell me? She asked, looking around at him for the first time. Well, where I was and to apologize. It was crummy of me to forget. Yeah, she said again. But you got your crummy side to you, Larry. Did you think I forgot that? He flushed. Mom, listen, you're bleeding. Some stripper hit you with a loaded G-string? She turned back to the shelves. And after she had counted the whole row of bottles on the top one, she made a notation on her clipboard. Someone has had themselves 2 bottles of floor wax this past week, she remarked. Lucky them. I came to say I was sorry. Larry told her loudly. She didn't jump, but he did. A little. Yeah, so you said. Mr. Geoghegan is gonna be on us like a ton of bricks if the damned floor wax doesn't stop going out. I didn't get in a barroom fight and I wasn't in a strip joint. It wasn't anything like that. It was just. He trailed off. She turned around, eyebrows arched in that old sardonic way he remembered so well. Was what? Well. He couldn't think of a convincing lie quick enough. It was. A spatula. Someone mistook you for a fried egg? Must have been quite a night you and Buddy had out on the town. He kept forgetting that she could run rings around him, had always been able to, probably always would. It was a girl, Ma. She threw it at me. She must be a hell of a shot, Alice Underwood said, and turned away again. That drat Consuela is hiding the requisition forms again. Not that they do much good, we never get all the stuff we need, but we get plenty I wouldn't know what to do with if my life depended on it. Ma, are you mad at me? Her hands suddenly dropped to her sides. Her shoulders slumped. Don't be mad at me, he whispered. Don't be, okay? Huh? She turned around and he saw an unnatural sparkle in her eyes. Well, he supposed it was natural enough, but it sure wasn't caused by the fluorescence in here, and he heard the oral hygienist say once more, with great finality, "You ain't no nice guy." Why had he ever bothered to come home if he was going to do stuff like this to her and never mind what she was doing to him? "Larry," she said gently. "Larry, Larry, Larry." For a moment he thought she was going to say no more, even allowed himself to hope this was so. "Is that all you can say? Don't be mad at me, please, Ma, don't be mad. I hear you on the radio, and even though I don't like that song you sing, I'm proud it's you singing it. People ask me if that's really my son and I say yes, that's Larry. I tell them you could always sing, and that's no lie, is it?" He shook his head miserably, not trusting himself to speak. "I tell them how you picked up Donnie Roberts's guitar when you were in junior high and how you were playing better than him in half an hour, even though he had lessons ever since second grade. You got talent, Larry, nobody ever had to tell me that, least of all you. I guess you knew it, too, because it's the only thing I never heard you whine about. Then you went away, and am I beating you about the head and shoulders with that? No. Young men and young women, they go away. That's the nature of the world. Sometimes it stinks, but it's natural. Then you come back. Does somebody have to tell me why that is? No. You come back because. Hit record or no hit record, you got in some kind of jam out there on the West Coast. I'm not in any trouble," he said indignantly. "Yes you are. I know the signs. I've been your mother for a long time, and you can't bullshit me, Larry. Trouble is something you have always looked around for when you couldn't just turn your head and see it. Sometimes I think you'd cross the street to step in dog's hit. God will forgive me for saying it, because God knows it's true. Am I mad? No. Am I disappointed? Yes. I had hoped you would change out there. You didn't. You went away a little boy in a man's body and you came back the same way, except the man got his hair processed. You know why I think you came home?" He looked at her, wanting to speak, but knowing the only thing he would be able to say if he did would make them both mad. "Don't cry, Mom, huh? I think you came home because you couldn't think where else to go. You didn't know who else would take you in. I never said a mean word about you to anyone else, Larry, not even to my own sister, but since you've pushed me to it, I'll tell you exactly what I think of you. I think you're a taker. You've always been one. It's like God left some part of you out when he built you inside of me. You're not bad, that's not what I mean. Some of the places we had to live after your father died, you would have gone bad if there was bad in you, God knows. I think the worst thing I ever caught you doing was writing a nasty word in the downstairs hall of that place on Carstairs Avenue in Queens. You remember that?" He remembered. She had chalked that same word on his forehead and then made him walk around the block with her 3 times. He had never written that word or any other word on a building, wall, or stoop. "The worst part, Larry, is that you mean well. Sometimes I think it would almost be a mercy if you were broke worse. As it is, you seem to know what's wrong but not how to fix it. And I don't know how, either. I tried every way I knew when you were small. Writing that word on your forehead, that was only one of them, and by then I was getting desperate, or I never would have done such a mean thing to you. You're a taker, that's all. You came home to me because you knew that I have to give. Not to everybody, but to you. I'll move out," he said, and every word was like spitting out a dry ball of lint. This afternoon. Then it came to him that he probably couldn't afford to move out, at least not until Wayne sent him his next royalty check or whatever was left of it after he finished feeding the hungriest of the LA hounds onto him. As for current out-of-pocket expenses, there was the rent on the parking slot for the Datsun Z, and a hefty payment he would have to send out by Friday, unless he wanted the friendly neighborhood repo man looking for him, and he didn't. And after last night's revel, which had begun so innocently with Buddy and his fiancée and this oral hygienist the fiancé knew, a nice girl from the Bronx, Larry, you'll love her, great sense of humor, he was pretty low on cash. No. If you wanted to be accurate, he was busted to his heels. The thought made him panicky. If he left his mother's now, where would he go? A hotel? The doorman at any hotel better than a flea bag would laugh his ass off and tell him to get lost. He was wearing good threads, but they knew. Somehow those bastards knew. They could smell an empty wallet. Don't go, she said softly. I wish you wouldn't, Larry. I bought some food special. Maybe you saw it. And I was hoping maybe we could play some gin rummy tonight. Ma, you can't play gin, he said, smiling a little. For a penny a point, I can beat the tailgate off a kid like you. Maybe if I gave you 400 points, listen to the kid. She jeered softly. Maybe if I gave you 400. Stick around, Larry. What do you say? All right, he said. For the first time that day he felt good, really good. A small voice inside whispered he was taking again, same old Larry, riding for free, but he refused to listen. This was his mother, after all, and she had asked him. It was true that she had said some pretty hard things on the way to asking, but asking was asking, true or false. Tell you what. I'll pay for our tickets to the game on July 4th. I'll just peel it off the top of whatever I skin you out of tonight. You couldn't skin a tomato, she said amiably, then turned back to the shelves. There's a men's down the hall. Why don't you go wash the blood off your forehead? Then take $10 out of my purse and go to a movie. There's some good movie houses over on 3rd Avenue, still. Just stay out of those scum pits around 49th and Broadway. I'll be giving money to you before long, Larry said. Records number 18 on the Billboard chart this week. I checked it in Sam Goody's Coming Over Here. That's wonderful. If you're so loaded, why didn't you buy a copy, instead of just looking? Suddenly there was some kind of a blockage in his throat. He harumphed, but it didn't go away. Well, never mind, she said. My tongue's like a horse with a bad temper. Once it starts running, it just has to go on running until it's tired out. You know that. Take 15, Larry. Call it a loan. I guess I will get it back, one way or the other. You will, he said. He came over to her and tugged at the hem of her dress like a little boy. She looked down. He stood on tiptoe and kissed her cheek. I love you, Ma. She looked startled, not at the kiss but either at what he had said or the tone in which he had said it. Why, I know that, Larry, she said. About what you said. About being in trouble. I am, a little, but it's not. Her voice was cold and stern at once. So cold, in fact, that it frightened him a little. I don't want to hear about that. Okay, he said. Listen, Ma, what's the best theater around here? The Lux Twin, she said, but I don't know what's playing there. It doesn't matter. You know what I think? There's 3 things you can get every place in America, but you can only get them good in New York City. Yeah, Mr. New York Times critic. What are those? Movies, baseball, and hot dogs from Nettix. She laughed. You ain't stupid, Larry, you never were. So he went down to the men's room. And washed the blood off his forehead. And went back and kissed his mother again. And got $15 from her scuffed black purse. And went to the movies at the Lux. and watched an insane, malignant revenant named Freddy Krueger suck a number of teenagers into the quicksand of their own dreams, where all but one of them, the heroine, died. Freddy Krueger also appeared to die at the end, but it was hard to tell, and since this movie had a Roman numeral after its name and seemed to be well attended, Larry thought the man with the razors on the tips of his fingers would be back, without knowing that the persistent sound in the row behind him signaled the end to all that. There would be no more sequels, and in a very short time, there would be no more movies at all. In the row behind Larry, a man was coughing.